Alamogordo is best known for is its landfill, the dump. Because supposedly, that's where Atari buried E.T., the worst video game of all time.
Even though it was before my time, the Atari made a lot of really cool games.
Rubbing it in.
No, I don't mean to rub it in, of course. But one of the games that made history was E.T., the video game, which is based off of course, the movie. And this game was made by one man. And this is the game that's featured in a documentary called Atari Game Over that you can find on Netflix. I did not know the story. Like many people, I only knew the story of this game that was horrific, that it always makes the top 10 list of worst video games of all time. And they do suss that out in the documentary, as well as a little bit of history with the Atari. But then jumping into the actual backstory of Atari and the world that was happening in video games, like they were the gods of Silicon Valley. And I didn't even realize the rock star mentality that went into all the people that worked for Atari at the time.
I mean, games always get forgotten as the Trojan horse for computing. You know, they're always the thing that allows people to kind of access monitors and computing language and computer interfaces. And back in those days, in the early 80s, Atari was where it was at. And you know, Steve Jobs famously worked there. And Howard Scott Warshaw, who is the star of this documentary, who is an amazing guy. I've met him a few times, and he's a very, very odd, strange character, as you can see exemplified in this documentary. But he is so passionate and so fun to listen to and so articulate and emotional in this doc. And I think it's great that he gets championed by this movie. I think it's great. Zach Penn is the director of the film. He's a writer in Hollywood that's worked on some pretty big blockbuster movies, but he's such a big game geek, he wanted to do something on this. Personally, I've always wanted to examine all of this as well. And we've interviewed Nolan Bushnell and some ex-Atari people in our day as well. But this was really well done with fantastic camera work and access to some really great people. And a whole bunch of true believers all show up to the dig in the desert, which I think is the marquee moment of this whole documentary.
For sure. The climactic moment of the documentary. But that's the thing, we just came from watching another documentary that I did not enjoy involving the video game industry. And this one completely bent the other way. It was fantastic. I love the way the story was told. I love that it made me believe in this man where this history already happened. Like, he went through so much crap and garbage because he had to make this game in 5 weeks. One man had to make a game in 5 weeks because, you know, they had to pull out with the season, the Christmas season, so he had to push it. And I guess just at that time, you have this ego and you think you can do all these things because you're working for this gaming company that has so much money. You work hard and you play hard. Which is exactly what it seemed like they were doing.
There was probably some sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
For sure.
At the offices of Atari in Milpitas, California, you know.
Which seems like a really cool time to be living and a cool movement to be a part of, but then to have this moment and have it all be taken from you in an instant and have this job go away and for your whole life to search for that feeling again. That's the emotion that you feel from this man in this interview. And I felt like all the interviews were fantastic and the direction was great, and I loved how there was humor put into it as well. And I just think it's showing us that their business is cyclical.
You know what? This is a fascinating thing, and I encourage everybody that's watching us, watching this show, and watching the work that we do, this is right up your alley.
Totally.
What are you going to give Atari Game Over?
It gets an 8.5.
8.5 from me as well.
EP's movie coverage is brought to you by Nintendo. Check out Xenoblade Chronicles 3D for the new 3DS.